Hello and welcome to this incredible edition of Crush Your Mountain Wellness. I wanted to really touch base with our guest today because this is so important for every woman, but every young woman coming up, okay? And we're going to hear this incredible story, but see how it applies to you, see how it applies to your sister, your daughters, young ladies out there. Please give deep thought to how you feel about yourselves and how you feel about your bodies. With all the images and commercials and social media, girls and women often struggle with having a positive body image. This week, we interviewed Debbie Saroufim, a body relationship coach who helps women around the world of all ages to develop a positive body image. Now, she says this: it took me most of my adult life to be able to say I love my body. In fact, I spent most of my life hating my body and obsessing over what a good body looked like. From a young age, I was terrified of having a bad body. My mother, with the best intentions, but very specific ideas of what a good body is, wanted so badly for me to be happy that she put me on a diet when I was in first grade. At some point, it became clear that my relationship with my body starts in my head, not in my abs or my glutes or any place else.
Yep.
So no amount of squats or lunges or pull-ups is going to make me feel whole. This process of learning to love your body is not something you can turn on and off. It took her a long time to let go of the notion of good and bad. These days, as a body relationship coach, Debbie helps women to learn to love their body, even while working on it, become immune to the ways or become immune to negative messages fed to women by the diet culture. Appreciate all the ways food can nourish them beyond mere nutrition. And so we're going to encourage you to connect to her community that will act as cheerleaders and support systems to help them towards self-love.
Right.
And we're going to find out what type of dog that is.
It's
Debbie
a big bark,
Saroufim,
but a teeny tiny dog. Hi.
Debbie Saroufim, welcome to Crush Your Mountain Wellness.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Apparently my dog is too. Come here, Shabbat. Come on. Nope. Okay. I'm hoping she'll be quiet from here on out.
Well, that's okay. So officially,
Very little
what type of dog is that?
She is a poodle terrier mix.
Oh, it's cute.
She's very cute. She's got a big bark and a very little body.
That's all right. That's right. So we'll just jump right in. Tell me, Debbie, why is this aspect of coaching so important for women today?
You know, I mean, it's important for women. It's important for everyone, is the truth, is that I think culturally we have been really taught that there are good bodies and bad bodies, that if you are doing the correct things, you know, you'll see my air quotes, if you're doing all the right things to take care of your body, then your body will respond by looking a certain way, which means that most of the people in the world think they're doing a very bad job of taking care of their body, because we have this very, very, very narrow definition of what taking care of your body is allowed to look like. I don't think you really get a choice in the type of body that you have. And so, you know, when I was put on my first diet in the first grade, it was because my mom believed that small bodies were better bodies. She believed she had a bigger body and she had been tormented for having a bigger body. And so in order to, you know, avoid having her daughter tormented for having a bigger body, she put her daughter on a diet so that her daughter would have a small body. It took me most of my life to realize, oh, I never had a big body. You know, this is my body. My body is not the smallest it has ever been. I definitely, you know, I went through my own eating disorder and had a much smaller body. But even in this body, my body is still a thin body. And I think that we've been really sort of taught that because good bodies look one way and bad bodies look another way, we have a whole bunch of people in thin bodies believing that they're fat, not recognizing that they actually have thin privileged body. And I always call it privileged because, again, I don't think you get a choice in the type of body that you have. So this is not the shape of my body because I'm a good person. This is not the shape of my body because I am better than you. This is the shape of my body because this is the shape of my body. And because I'm in a thin body, the world is a lot nicer to me. That's a problem with the world, right? That I have access to things that people in bigger bodies don't have access to, and that I am given more privileges and freedoms because I'm in a thin body. That's a problem with the world, but the problem is not your body. And I think that most people are apologizing for their bodies in some way, shape, or form, either saying, oh, I'm sorry I didn't get to the gym today, and oh, I'm so lazy, or oh, I shouldn't have had this, I was really bad this weekend, I had a whole bag of chips, all this sort of stuff. And we're taking on the role of villain in our life, in our self-care, rather than recognizing, hey, our body's not the problem. Our relationship to it and our cultural relationship to it is. And so if we know that feeling like your body is too big or too small or too old or too wrinkled or too whatever, right? If we know that feeling like something is wrong with your body is not actually a symptom of something being wrong with your body, then rather than trying to fix what we believe is wrong, can we instead take that attention and put it on to nurturing what's actually the problem, right? Because a lot of times when I'm feeling less than in my body, it's because I need a hug or some human connection or some space for my thoughts, or maybe I need to meditate. All these different things. There are so many things we can do to tend to that hurt feeling, because the problem's not actually the body. And so my job is to help you really learn how to care for yourself. I believe that you can love your body even if you don't like everything about it. And I don't think you have to like everything about it. I think because it's a relationship, I think it's like a relationship with anyone else. And I always compare it to my husband, which is perfect because we're in his childhood bedroom because we are visiting my in-laws. And, I love my husband. He's great. I've had two. So he's definitely like the upgrade. I really like this guy. Good, solid guy, nice dad. He cooks for the family and the whole thing. And
okay, man after my own heart. I like it.
I get frustrated with him. He gets on my nerves. There are times when he's the last person I want to see because like his voice is irritating, right? And it's not because he's a bad person. It's because we're in a relationship and it doesn't have to feel 100% good 100% of the time for it to be a really great compatible relationship that nourishes me, that makes me a better person. And I don't have to love everything about him. He goes to bed really, really late at night, which is nice because he takes the dogs out. But then it's really hard to wake him up in the morning. And I find it incredibly frustrating. And I don't have to like that he doesn't wake up super early in the morning, even though I do. I don't have to like it. It doesn't make him a bad person. It just means there's something about him that I find kind of annoying. And honestly, like if that's the thing I find annoying about him, that's not that bad of a thing, right? So you can feel the same way about your body, right? You don't have to love your waist size. You can be like, man, my waist is super frustrating. No matter what I do, it stays a size I don't like. But I'm allowed to love my body without loving the size of it. We're not really given permission for that.
Yeah. I'll tell you something so interesting. I'm a bit of a history buff and, an ancient history buff. And I have looked at all of the different images, the ancient images of the Venus. And I'm not talking about the Michelangelo version, okay? The Greek god is the Greek god type guy. I'm talking about those ancient ones and not one of them has a Barbie figure.
Well, Barbie's figure doesn't really exist in real life, and it's getting worse because now we have all of these filters that are sort of adding these unrealistic expectations to people. I think it's really hard. I think, when we think of what our culture believes a good body looks like, we really start to, it's really very centered around white types. I think different bodies come in different shapes and sizes. And I think that, all of these sort of what we've decided are the appropriate way to look is eliminating so much of the world
And
from
that
what's allowed
changes
to be beautiful.
that changes roughly every, I guess I would say every 50 years or so, because you think about the 60s, you had the twiggy character, the type of person who was incredibly
Absolutely.
thin.
Well, but what's so interesting is so much of this idea of what makes a woman beautiful is wrapped up in, again, this sort of white male ego. When it was more fashionable for women to be plump and curvy, it was because it was a sign that her husband was able to feed her, and he was affluent enough that, look, he can get some extra meat on her bones. And then it got down to very, very skinny, and that came from a time in our history when if you were truly successful, you could have the frailest wife who couldn't do anything for herself because you could have help do it. And so it's really all catered around this idea of what makes it's the patriarchy, it's white supremacy, it's all of it, right? Wrapped up into these ideas of what make acceptable bodies. And I think, I was chasing after this acceptable body, this acceptable idea of a body for years, and would never have considered myself a person who bought into, racist thinking. And when you trace back the lineage, you realize that there's a lot of it there. I think that helps me honestly now talk back to the voice. I think, again, culturally, I think we're taught that smaller is better. So I would be lying if I said that there isn't a part of me that still wants to be smaller, because again, the message is smaller is better, smaller is better, smaller is better. So I have been smaller, and I recognize that as much as I'm in a thin privileged body now, I know how easy things were before, right? So I can appreciate that. And when I hear the voice in my head start to criticize me and say, you should be smaller, this is why, I have to remind myself again that so many of these body ideals are wrapped up in messages that I don't really subscribe to, right? Because I believe that these ideas are all wrapped around a white body is a good body, and I don't actually believe that, then I recognize, okay, I don't need to chase that, because chasing that reinforces that belief, right? That there is one good type of a body. So again, I'm allowed to be disappointed in parts of my body without it meaning that my body is bad, right? And just sort of recognizing, culturally, I've been given a million reasons to get frustrated with my body. So being frustrated with my body isn't the problem, right? The culture that's teaching me to be frustrated with my body is the problem.
So that begs the question, how does one begin to love their body?
So
what's the first steps?
Yeah, I think that one of the first steps is recognizing that loving your body doesn't always feel like love. Like I would compare again to my husband, right? I always know I love him, but sometimes I'm excited by him, and sometimes I'm turned on, and sometimes I'm disgusted, and sometimes I'm like the sound, whatever, right? Like that all lives within what I consider to be an excellent, loving, passionate relationship. And so I would challenge you, if you're looking to make peace with your body and to work on your relationship, to recognize that having a good relationship with your body doesn't mean it feels good 100% of the time. It doesn't mean that you just look at yourself and you're like, I am amazing and I love everything about myself, because I haven't really honestly figured out how to do that. I think that having a good relationship with your body is recognizing that not liking something about your body doesn't mean your body's bad, and that you can still care for it and nourish it. And then start to really, what I teach you to do and how I work with my clients, both one-on-one, and then I also have a private membership community where we do this together, is I teach you how to have that conversation, right, with that hypercritical voice, because that hypercritical voice lives in all of us, men, women, children, you name it. And it's the voice that says, you shouldn't do that. You didn't earn it. You're not good enough. You'd be better if you did da 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 da. And it doesn't really matter what it's saying, because it's somewhat different for different people, right? We all have foods that you shouldn't eat that food. That's a bad food, but my bad food might be somebody else's good food, or it doesn't really matter, right? It's that the exact phrasing of what that voice is saying doesn't matter. What I teach you how to do is to have a conversation with it, because I think that, again, culturally, we've been taught when that voice says you shouldn't do that, you're like, okay, or you're like, I know I'm so bad, and then taking on the bad. What happens if you're allowed to have an actual conversation with that voice and say, okay, why shouldn't I? And then the voice is going to have to say something, well, because you were, and we start to be able to pick holes in it, right? So that when the voice is like, well, you haven't earned it. Oh, do I have to earn my food? No, you don't have to earn your food, but maybe if you move somewhere, well, how much would be enough movement to eat? Are you saying I have to move to all these sort of things that we kind of take for granted? And it seems this is a drastic oversimplification, but essentially, yeah, I teach you how to have a functioning relationship, a conversation with that voice, so that voice is allowed to get loud, and you're not just at the mercy of how loud it is. You're allowed to talk back. You're allowed to take a break and just sort of say, okay, I'm going to let you talk because I don't have the energy to talk back to you today. Or sometimes you're gonna be like, hey, I hear you and you're whining and you're annoying me, so I'm just gonna, and it's really then participatory.
Mm-hmm. Well, two things. Okay. For the record, as one who, as a man who's been married since you were probably about 10.
Okay.
And observing the website and seeing you here, you don't have any body issues. Trust us. Okay.
Well, that's
Secondly, okay, what I'm going to say is that I've got some young ladies, my little babies, and they're all in their teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them called me the other day, and they said, great uncle, I'm fat. I said, honey, you're not fat, baby, you're beautiful. And she was.
So I love that you brought this up. So when someone said, here is what our culture has done, is when someone complains that they are fat, we want to say, no, you're not, you're beautiful, which is really reinforcing that fat and beautiful can't coexist, except they can. You can be fat, beautiful. I am fatter than I used to be. I'm not fat, but I'm fatter than I used to be, and I am still beautiful. I could gain 100 pounds, and you might not like the shape of my body, but I might still be beautiful. Again, this idea that you have to be thin to be beautiful kind of goes back to this. All of a sudden we understand, oh, well, that's why people are afraid to be bigger. So if your niece or friend or family member is calling you and saying, I think I'm fat, I would say, okay, well, personally, I'd say fat's not a feeling. Fat is something that lives on our bodies. But if you're feeling fat, that usually to me means that that you're not feeling connected to the power that you have beyond your body. So I would say, you don't have to feel beautiful to be beautiful, and you can be fat and be beautiful. And I'm never gonna argue with someone if they're fat or not. I think it's a losing argument. If they think they're fat, it doesn't matter if you think that they are the skinniest person in the world, you're not going to change their mind. So instead, remind them that they can be beautiful while they're in a body that they don't necessarily like.
I asked you that question to set you up for this one.
Oh, okay.
Does that mean that obesity is okay?
Oh man, you're going for the good ones. So obesity is a term that is completely based on the BMI scale, which has been long outdated. So the term obesity is kind of, First of all, the word obese can't hurt you. And obesity is when we recognize that it's based on the BMI scale, which I will just say again, the BMI scale was created. It was never meant as a means of measuring health. It was a statistical tool, and it was only ever based off of, again, white men. There were no men of color in the mix when they created the BMI scale. There's no, so when women's bodies are being put on the BMI scale, again, it's being compared to a white male body. This is where we come back into that idea of white bodies are good bodies, which is, I don't believe, true, right? So, but in answer to your question, is obesity good? I think obesity is kind of bullshit, because it's just a made up term based off of a made up scale. Now, here's the thing. I am not going to, if we recognize that we don't get a say in the size of our body, and we recognize that statistically, now we're looking at statistics, okay? Statistically, 98% of diets fail in the long term. Now, 95% of diets work in the short term, but 98% of diets fail in the long term, which means that if our only solution to getting someone healthy is getting them thin, we've got a 2% chance of success. So I would say, rather than treat someone as if they're obese, I would say, look at the actual issues that are going on. Perhaps the obesity, again, it's a BMI term, so I don't really love using it, but perhaps the weight is the result of something else going on. But weight in and of itself, there's been no scientific correlation to the weight, the number on the scale in and of itself being harmful. Again, weight can be indicative of something else, right? It can be thyroid or PCOS or any of these different things. It can be depression, it can be anxiety, it can be all sorts of things, but the number isn't the problem.
Okay, I agree with that. So I'm just curious, because now there's also the term diabesity, which links links weight with diabetes as a result of that. So
that's a myth. Thin people have diabetes and fat people have diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic condition that affects how people's body breaks down insulin. So I work with a lot of diabetic people.
Both type 1 and type 2?
Both type 1 and type 2. Some of them are in fatter bodies. Some of them are in thinner bodies. Whenever any of them have attempted to cut carbs in order to get their diabetes under control, their numbers end up skyrocketing. Again, it's when we recognize that it's not the food, right? It's not the food. This is the way our body is relating to this food. So there's nothing wrong with carbs. In fact, the human body needs carbs. Again, when these clients are cutting carbs, that's when their A1C is going berserk, because they need carbs to function. They just need to know that carbs aren't bad. And if they're not bad, then it doesn't have to be taken not at all or in massive quantities. And if they're pairing it properly with foods, and I refer out to, I have several dietitians who specialize in diabetes if you feel you need more help than what I can offer. But yeah, it's been, once we've started to incorporate some of these foods that they've been taught they're bad for having back in the picture, that their numbers are coming down. I've even had a couple people be able to go, I don't take them off medication. I'm not a medical professional, but I've had a few people even be able to go off their medication when they started incorporating. Their doctor took them off. They're like, your numbers are getting better. You don't have to be on this medication anymore. So again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to take anybody off anything. I'm not going to do anything without your doctor's approval, but there's a difference between, diabetes is not a fat person disease. I have a couple of relatives who are thin and have it. My in-laws are both in fat bodies and don't have diabetes. Diabetes doesn't run in their family. So it's hereditary. And unfortunately, the weight stigma that's attached to the disease means that so many people aren't being given proper diabetic treatment because they're being diagnosed to, or they're being, prescribed weight loss instead of actually attacking the problem.
I remember when my dad was diagnosed, and the thinking at the time was, well, we'll put you on insulin to manage. But the thing about it is, insulin stimulates fat growth in the body.
Mm-hmm.
So they're telling him to lose weight, and they're having him inject himself with something
Yeah.
that causes him to gain weight.
Well, again, the weight's not the problem,
So, yeah,
really, right?
exactly.
We've criminalized weight gain, and again, and now after a 2-year pandemic, when statistically everybody's body weight has gone up, again, you've got everybody apologizing. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I did to myself during COVID, but I ate and now I'm bigger. The number on the scale isn't the problem. And I think that what you're talking about with your dad is a really great example, right? The number on the scale wasn't indicative of how his diabetes was doing. But if your diagnosis, if someone had cancer, which is horrible, but if someone had cancer and the doctor was like, oh, cool, I have this treatment, you go on a diet, you've got a 2% chance of living with cancer, I'd be like, doc, what else are my options? Can you give me more than a 2% chance? But fat phobia is so it's just so permeated through the entire culture that doctors suffer from it too. We are mere mortals, and I think as just I consider myself, an anti-fat phobic activist, a fat advocate. Fat phobia lives within me because we live in this culture, and so some of these thoughts are kind of in there. I hear a thought, and then I have to check myself and go, oh, Debbie, that's a fat phobic thought. That's culturally been put there. That's not actual truth. And again, learning how to talk back to that voice is part of it, right? Because the voice that continues to tell me that I'm not small enough, that I'm not enough, that I'm not that enough, that is that fat phobic voice that, again, agrees that there is a good body and a bad body. And so I don't think that I want to say, if anybody's noticing, if they're listening now and they're like, oh man, I think that is something wrong with me. No, nothing's wrong with you. I think that stuff too. We've been taught to think that stuff culturally. We've been spoon fed it. The idea is, how do we talk back to it so that we're no longer at the mercy of the culture?
It's interesting because I remember a few years ago, I think they either refused to let a woman on the plane or made her get off because of that, because of the weight issue, and so it just goes to show how severe it can be.
Oh,
yeah. The way we treat people and the way we avoid people and the way we either show a lack of love. Now, that said, though, then there's the other aspect, the other end of the spectrum, those that are very conscious of working out, exercising. I have a very good friend of mine. She's a personal trainer, and she's amazing. And she's in fact, I know a few people. I have a couple of friends. One lady, the personal trainer, she is in her 50s, and from here down, she could be in her very muscular 20s.
Oh, wow.
I know another lady, she's another good friend of mine. She is, I think, 82 now, and from here down, she's about 40.
Wow.
And she competes in the body.
Well, but what you're talking about is the fact that we don't get a choice. Oh, go ahead. You were saying.
Yeah, the question I want to ask you, though, how does a person's motive play a role or play a part in their body relationship? How does that motive, you see?
Well, so I think that's a great question. I think that, again, culturally, we've been taught that smaller is better. So I don't think we can eliminate the desire to look a certain way completely from the motive. I would say, first of all, both of these women that you're talking about, without even seeing them, I can tell you that genetically they're predisposed to certain body types, right? In the worst of my eating disorder, I stopped getting my period for about 6 months. I wasn't eating. I remember I had an apple for lunch and then like a half a chicken breast for dinner. That was my meal consumption for the day. So I was completely unhealthy. And in the worst of my eating disorder, I never once had a 6-pack. I never looked like brittle or bony. Different body types are prone to different things. In fact, some of the people, and just to be really, really clear, some of the people that I know eating least amount of food with eating disorders are some people in very, very, very fat bodies. Mm-hmm. So again, you don't really get a say. So it sounds like you have two female friends who are predisposed to this very athletic physique, that when they do these things, these types of workouts, their body looks that certain way, which is they are not normal, not in a bad way, not normal, not in a bad way. But most people, if they do the same amount of work as these people, I can tell you as a person, again, I worked out 6 hours a day. I'm never have looked like your friend, never gonna look like your friend. So I think it's okay for your friend to enjoy looking like this. I think it's fabulous, right? They're not normal, but in a fabulous, fabulous way, and that we all kind of want to not be normal, right? So let them enjoy it. But I think where the problem is if they start to take that on as, I am good, I am a good person because my body looks like this. That's the myth, right? Mm-hmm. The truth is that it sounds like you've got some very, 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 I want to say lucky, privileged, physically privileged friends who, if you're friends with them, I, like you, I'm going to assume they're decent people. So it sounds like they're good people who happen to have an exceptionally rare, socially accepted body type, right? So I don't have a problem with you wanting to look like this. Again, when we recognize that it is a privilege, that people of certain body types do have access to certain things that people of other body types don't have, right? Like if we look at how I'm privileged, we get to say, okay, so I'm in a thin privileged body. Cool. I have white privilege. I'm a woman, so I get docked down a couple points, right? We all have these different levels of privilege that we're playing with. And so when we recognize that it's a privilege versus I am good because I am this, then that's where we have the space to expand and help other people with our privilege, right? My job is not to just reap rewards as a thin white woman. My job is to say, okay, well, how can I change the inequalities between someone in a less privileged body? Because I don't believe that them being in a less privileged body means that they are less good than me. It just means I have access to things that they don't have. And again, that's a cultural problem. So I don't mind if you want to be thin, if you have a desire to be thin. Again, I want to be thin. I have a desire to be thin. I think it makes sense culturally because thin people who look a certain way have access to more stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But when you recognize wanting it is different than being able to have it, right? All of a sudden it's a different ball game. We're working with different stuff all of a sudden, and all of a sudden we can really address the problems that are there.
We're looking at the world changing in so many different ways. There's the idea of inclusiveness, which is often taken to different extremes. But that said, with the treatment and, dare I say, maltreatment of women around the world, how does having a relationship with one's body, a positive relationship with one's body, benefit not just the individual, but their community and indeed the world?
I mean, I think that, again, when you have a positive, I even hesitate to use the word positive because, again, I think having a good relationship with your body, there's room for feeling, can I curse on here? There's room for feeling yucky. I'll say there's room for feeling yucky. Having a good relationship with your body, there's room to not feel great, right? Like you can wake up and be like, oh, I don't like what I'm seeing today. I don't like what I'm feeling today. And you can still have a good relationship with your body. I have those days. So again, when we recognize that having a good relationship with our body allows us to not like things about our body without it making those things wrong. You know, I liked myself smaller, but me being this size isn't a bad thing, right? You're allowed to like one more than the other. When we recognize that, then there's room to, you know, to make the gap between privileged and less privileged smaller. When we recognize that, again, that I'm not good for being in this thin body, I just happen to be in a thin body, then we also aren't going to punish people or penalize people for being in a not as socially acceptable body. So I think making peace with your body, again, you don't have to like it all the time. It doesn't always have to feel good, but I think that we no longer have to feel, also, again, yucky when the ways of the world don't fit us, right? Like the size inclusivity no longer has to be something that's wrong with us. It can be, yeah, size inclusivity is, yeah, there's a problem with size inclusivity. There's not enough size inclusivity, as opposed to I don't fit what's considered inclusive, right? And I think that's the difference.
Wow. Now you have so many different programs that you offer to your clients. Let me just give you an idea. I work with individuals on a number of levels, both on a one-on-one basis, also in groups. I have a detox where I help individuals to basically get the stuff out. All that, maybe it usually happens around the holidays, when they, right after the holidays, they just need to get all the stuff out. And I work with them that way, but also work with them on a one-on-one basis. And the other thing that I do is develop a retreat whereby we go on these health retreats. It's usually either to my mom's country, which is St. Kitts Nevis, or we go out to a retreat called Chrysalis. Ironically, no relationship, but they, but other than we have the same, they got a company name. But that's where we also do our deep meditation. We do our focus on things. So my question to you is, do you have an upcoming retreat event? I know you have your group coaching. I know you have
I do. I have actually, it's so interesting. So I just like you, I do the one-on-one coaching, but I also have the membership, which is a private community where it is a size inclusive community. It's eating disorder friendly, but not eating disorder specific. I promise this is leading to the retreat. I'm not ignoring the retreat question. This is going there. But it's size inclusive. We've got some women in there who are very, 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 very thin and really struggling. And we've got some women in there who are very, 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 very fat and really struggling. And what we do together in that community is, again, start to identify our own fat phobia. We start to recognize that, oh, she feels the same way, and she feels the same way, and she feels the same way, and she feels the same way. And we all look different. Again, maybe these feelings aren't about how we look. Maybe these feelings are a bigger cultural issue. The group started a little over a year ago. I had done a workshop, and a few of the women who had done the workshop with me, we wanted to continue working together. So I started a small membership. It was 2 people. We're up to like 18, and the women they're from all over the country, or not all over, they're from all over the world. I've got one in Germany. I've got someone in Australia. I've got someone in the Netherlands and Bulgaria. They're from all over the world. These women have been working together for a couple of years now, and really loving each other and really supporting each other and helping each other advocate for themselves at doctors' offices and in the world. And we've never met in person. And so I am organizing a private membership retreat that's happening this October. Wow. I'm so excited. We've got we're going to Temecula. It'll be sort of between San Diego and Los Angeles, but we've got this gorgeous estate that we are using. Everything's going to be private catered, private chef. And we're, again, it's very, very, very body diverse. So again, making a space for all the feelings that come up. I know that as much as we teach size inclusivity, sometimes different sizes can still make us uncomfortable. This is going to be a place where we come together. We practice being uncomfortable being seen in our bodies, and knowing that we're okay. We're going to eat foods that might feel a little bit scary, and we're going to probably wear bathing suits, and that'll be uncomfortable too. And we're going to know that no matter how uncomfortable we are safe and loved. And so I'm so excited for the retreat. It's going to be my first retreat. I've never retreated. And so I'm so excited, and to bring the women with me. I feel like they've worked so hard for it. And so I'll say that because it's a members only retreat, but if that's something that you think you might be interested in doing, there is still time to sign up for the membership, get to know the women. It's a very cool space. And you can come with us and do all those things that sound terrifying and probably horrible. But I think it's going to be great.
My question would be, how does one in a group sit with being uncomfortable?
Yeah. Well, we sit together. We do it via Zoom all the time.
In this retreat, what's the plan?
Yeah, well, the plan, and I'm not going to reveal all my secrets because a lot of these things are going to be surprises for my members. So I'm not,
okay.
But I will say we're going to be doing a lot of, there's going to be a lot of in-person group sessions together, present, again, eating some scarier foods that we feel judged for eating. Recognizing, bringing real attention to the things that are normally ignored, right? To the things that, like, hey, I see you in a big body, and I know that must feel weird for you to eat that food in front of me. And I want you to know, I don't have a problem with you eating that food, right? Like, this is that space where we will practice flexing those muscles, if you will, because we want to take that safety that we feel within my private community, and we want to bring that safety with us. And we have, I talk very much with my women about, in my community, we have, I have little kids. So we read the book, The Invisible String. I don't know if you know that book, but there's an invisible string, and it connects all the people of the universe. And that's how people are always connected, whether they feel it or not. And, my women, we've had some pretty intense things happen within the community that have happened to different members. And we pull that invisible string as we go. So I've had a couple of members go into, outpatient or inpatient programs for eating disorders. We've brought the group with us, right? So that we're together, so that it's scary, but you're not alone. Even when you feel like you're alone, you've got the membership women cheering you on when mom says something about, oh, you're eating that, I thought you were on it. Anytime that someone gets to say something about your body and you feel wounded, you get to remember that you've got this shield of women who see it for what it really is, which is, that's a cultural problem. That's not a problem with your body. You get to take a little bit of that safety with you. So that is what sitting in your discomfort looks like, is bringing awareness to the things we often try to laugh off, and recognizing that we are strong enough to exist in them without shying away. And then when you sit in your discomfort long enough, I do believe on the other side is power. So that's where you get to tap into the power that is more than the size of your body, that is more than we're culturally allowed to believe it is, right? This is where you get to tap into that. So
Debbie, I really want to thank you so much for bringing all of this insight and your expertise and your viewpoints to our program. So many of us, so many women, need to come to the appreciation that they are beautiful as they are, okay? And their desire to improve should not be a desire to please the world, but a desire to continue to love themselves.
Absolutely.
I want to just ask you one more question.
Yes.
I ask this to all my guests. And you've done so much. You yourself have overcome the traumas of dealing with your own body issues, and now you're helping so many others around the world to do the same thing. Debbie Saroufim, tell us, what does it mean to you to crush your mountain?
Yes, I love the question. I think that crushing your mountain to me is not something you just do once. I think it is a lifelong journey. And I think to me, I would say crushing my mountain is talking back to that voice. That voice gets louder on certain days, voice gets quieter on other days, knowing that my value doesn't fluctuate with the volume of the voice and constantly talking back to it. It's something I have to do every day. It's something I'm going to have to do every day for the rest of my life. Because I mean, I'm a woman, so women diminish in value as they age, except for that I have never been more powerful. Again, if you sit in that discomfort, I think there's power on the other side. So every day I sit in the discomfort of having a less than perfect body in an aging body that's, I mean, again, you know, I'm older than I was 10 years ago. It's every day I get one, I have to do it again because diet culture and its implications around what bodies are isn't going anywhere. So I have to continue to crush my mountain every day to make peace with my body.
Excellent. Well, that said, we want to continue to encourage you to keep on the path because we know that you're doing good things for so many different women. And I hope that all of you women out there have found value in this particular program because I brought her on not just for my little group, but I brought her on for anyone that is out there that might be struggling. But we really want to thank you, Debbie, for being here. Thank you so much. And friends, again, if you found value in this information, if you know somebody that can benefit from this conversation, you can always rewind and take notes from the little bits that you might value from here. But most importantly, come back again, hit the like button, subscribe, and again, don't just climb your mountain, crush through it. We will see you next time. Debbie, thanks again.
Thank you so much.